had a vision of the man I wanted to marry, who I now call Chris. As you have most likely heard me share, I had a desire to get me one of them Midwest men who put family first, wouldn't try to change me, and would love me for who I was, and had a beard and wore flannel. Note, when we first started dating, Chris did not have a big beard or much flannel, more like baggy jeans and the largest t-shirt collection a man could have. Marie Kondo, help. It was his heart that got me. This tenderness, this softness, this forgiveness that was always present. It was almost foreign to me. Oh, and he was loyal, so loyal, and a truth teller, and it all caught me off guard. I liked him a lot, and I love that I learned from him a lot. And when he came to visit me for the first time from Chicago to LA, he cleaned the dishes. You guys, weeks of dishes stacked in the sinks. So gross. I asked him why he didn't run for the hills. He said he saw past it. Kind of like me seeing past his baggy jeans. And I stared at him last night, reading to our Evie girl, and he was doing these funny voices and fully committed. And I fell in love with a new part of him I hadn't seen yet. One I never knew of him when I dreamed up this life. In marrying Chris and having children and being on the same team, I have found there is a delicate balance with the power of vision and the equal power of uncertainty and major openness. I am figuring out the line and learning from both. Having a vision that inspires me and being so open to what or who will walk right into your life and clean the dishes and read the kiddos' books with funny voices and teach you more about yourself than you even know. A delicate balance of possibility and magic, And with that being read, I want to welcome you back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is a goal coach, leadership consultant, speaker, hiker, wife, mama, co-founder of Rock Your Bliss, creator of Goals, Hikes, and finally, podcaster. Today's guest is Jacki Carr. Jacki, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be on.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have you, and I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to hang out with me and the 127 Fit podcast listeners. So, Jacki, we kind of like to start with a little bit of a warm-up. So the first question I have for you today is, how do you start your day, and kind of what does your morning routine look like?
Okay, we're going to start with honesty.
Awesome.
I don't have a morning routine.
There we go. Perfect.
I have children. It changes every day.
Beautiful.
And so I live a very dynamic life, is what I would say.
Uh-huh.
Staples that are in my mornings, though, would be woken up by a child, whether it's my almost 3-year-old Evie or a loud cry from my 9-month-old Nora. There's always butter coffee.
Perfect.
Always. That's like what I move around searching for is my bulletproof coffee. And then I do strive to sit down at breakfast and be with my family before the day starts. And those are never in order. They're never at the same time. But those are definitely ways I love to start my day. Coffee, eye contact, and someone else waking me up, preferably at a time that isn't when I want to wake up.
Perfect. Awesome. I love the transparency and the honesty. It's a good way to start things off. So, second question. Now, I usually ask my guests, Jacki, what their favorite book is, or the book they're currently reading, or a book that they gift often. But on your website, you have your own book club called Novel Grape. So, I just kind of want to relate or tie into this You Are a Badass book by Jen Sincero, because I just did a podcast interview on Sunday with a young lady, and she brought up that book and said that was a really revolutionary, transformative book in her life. So what is You Are a Badass book? What does that book mean to you, or what did that do for you personally?
Yeah, we read that book in our book club, I think 2 years ago now. Our book club loves some self-help books. We love reading self-help. I'll sprinkle in some memoirs and fiction to break it up for the brain, but we really pack it on with the knowledge. So Jen Sincero's book, it's chock full of knowledge. What I loved is how she talked about God. She talked about God as source. And I thought that was such a cool way to bring in that conversation. So I commend her for that. I also love like how she broke down her chapters very tool-based. Now, again, the truth. I was mad that I didn't write that book. So I read it a little judgy because it was so good and I wanted to write it myself because I have goals to write a book one day. Right. So I use it as a template of like, wow, this idea of I'm reading this and I'm feeling these emotions. Cool, this goes on my goal sheet. So I think the book is an amazing read. I've heard great things. Next on my list is her You Are a Badass at Making Money.
Right, yep.
So both are great if you want to be entering the self-help reading world.
Cool. Now, is this book You Are a Badass, is it, could a dude read it or is it more geared towards chicks?
I think a dude could read it. I would want to be a badass if I was a dude or a woman, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I just, I just because, I don't know, I just think maybe it is probably geared more towards females, but...
I love when dudes read female authors. Yeah, I think it's really good.
It's good. It is good. Yeah, okay. So, dudes, you can read this book too, so that's awesome. I'm going to have to check it out, because I know the other lady, she highly recommended it, so... And
cool.
It was in my notes for that podcast, so... and then I also saw in your book club a couple books by Brene Brown. What do you appreciate about Brene Brown and maybe her writing style or what she speaks about?
Okay, so Brene is one of my favorite authors. I call her my own fairy godmother, selected by me. And first of all, if you haven't seen Brene's TED Talk on the power of vulnerability, run. Don't walk to a computer and press play. It's all about vulnerability as a way to access personal power, as a way to be human, as a way to connect with others. And my first book I read by her was The Gifts of Imperfection. And first of all, that title alone, The Gifts of Imperfection, I think I was trying to do and be perfect in my 20s and it really wasn't working. So in that book, she had so many permission slips and aha moments about being honest with yourself, about being honest with how much time you actually have and making mistakes and falling down and getting back up again and sharing from that space. And so I love Brene's writing. It's really relatable. She's a great storyteller. She's from Texas. She lives in Texas now, and I'm a Texan, so it works well. I've actually met her. A lot of people maybe get nervous when they see a celebrity,
right,
and their palms might sweat, and I don't give a crap about celebrities. When Brene Brown walks in the door, I'm full on sweating out of every pore, and it was the coolest moment. I brought all my books for her to sign, and we really had a great connection. She lives up to what she speaks.
Awesome. Now, if you don't mind, I want to touch on this kind of perfectionism thing. You said in your 20s you kind of struggled with that a little bit, correct?
Yeah, still now, but more so in my 20s.
Right. Well, the reason why I want to bring this up, Jackie, is because when I was younger, like, I always consider myself a perfectionist, and that created a lot of anxiety in my life, and I used the word like nervousness, and I felt like there was a really like heavy weight and burden on my shoulders, and it hasn't been I'll be 32 this year, so it's probably like my late 20s where I kind of realized like you just, life's crazy, life's not perfect. Like, I'm big into like fitness and training. No training session's gonna be perfect. Like, I'm not perfect. No human being's perfect. There's nothing perfect in this world. So once I started in my mind kind of accepting that and realizing that, and just realizing like, dude, just go and attack each day, do the best that you can, that was very freeing for me. So if you don't mind just touching on kind of you realizing that you struggle with this thing called perfectionism, and then how did you kind of work through that, and how are you still continuing to work through that? If you don't mind me asking that, and you just kind of touching on that a little bit, because I feel like type A people like yourself and myself, and people that are very driven and very goal oriented and want more out of life than just the mundane and the normal, like, there's, I think, a lot of us struggle with that perfectionism and anxiety and like, am I enough? Am I doing enough? So just take it away if you don't mind.
Yeah, I don't mind at all.
Cool.
I think it started. I'm the oldest of my sisters, so I have three. There's three of us. I'm the oldest. I think that's a part of it. You know, wanting to lead by example,
right?
Make your parents happy. I fall into that older child, ideal quite often.
Mm-hmm.
Making A's in school. That was where I think I definitely found this anxiety of oh my God, I gotta be, or oh, I didn't say the right answer. I hated failing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved into high school with sports. Same thing. I struck out in softball crying. Tom Hanks, there's no crying in baseball. I broke that rule every day. And then into college, I noticed I was pretty insecure. And whether that had to do with body image or fitting in with other women or even knowing what major I wanted to be, there was just a lot of things that didn't feel perfect.
Right.
And what happened, similar to you, I would say, through my 20s, I worked at Lululemon, which is such a cool company that has a culture of personal development. And they had this cool thing around looking good. Are you doing that to look good, or are you doing that in alignment to your vision and goals? And I was like, oh my God. And I think there was a lot of prove it mode for me. There was a lot of looking good for me. And I know my 20s is draped in external validation. I was waiting for someone to give me a gold star, a promotion, tell me I was doing a good job. Mm-hmm. I never, ever did it for myself. So my perfectionism was very rooted in external factors. Someone else reflecting back that I was doing it quote unquote perfectly. And I found in this moment of starting to step into my truth, starting to step into oh right, I am Jacki Carr. And not trying to fit into what other people wanted. Perhaps someone I was dating, what they wanted. Mm-hmm. Not fitting into the perfect mold at the job I was working at was very freeing, but also for us recovering type A people, very uncomfortable.
Right.
And so when you ask now how I'm still working this, I have so many tools now, especially as a coach, and I work close with my mentor that I keep want to learn from those books too. Mm-hmm. Where I lean on tools like core values work to know what actually matters to me.
Right.
I lean on my own vision to make sure my yes and my no is in alignment to where I want to be going, mm-hmm. not where someone else wants me going, not even where my parents want me to be going.
Right, exactly.
And so starting to move into this place that Brene talks about, of vulnerability, saying things that might ruffle some feathers but are your deep-seated truth, being vulnerable when your feelings are hurt. This is a place that I find I have moved into in the beauty and the wiseness mm-hmm. of my 30s, which makes me so excited for my 40s, 50s, and even 80s.
It's going to get better, right?
It just keeps getting better.
I hope so.
Yeah, for me, I'm still recovering perfectionist, recovering type A. And yet the moment where I started to look at the people that I actually want to be the ones I'm seeking validation from, and then more so learning how to validate my own self through how I'm living, integrity of how I'm showing up in both my personal and professional life, and starting to create check-ins that support this ability to be human, not perfect.
Right. Now, what's you just said the word check-in. What is that? Can you break that down a little bit, please?
Yeah, so I talk about core values. That's my foundation. Okay. So when I check in on my values, I look at how I'm living. I have 5. Nature, knowledge, hence all the books, family, connection, and then my last one, it always changes every year. This year I'm playing with service. And I look at how those are alive and well. And if one of them's off, if they're all off, that's a great place. I love a rhyme for me to check myself before I wreck myself.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So could I also say that life has, through the relationship with your husband and having kids and all of that, has life kind of also shoved you outside of that perfectionism, and you've just basically had to say either I'm going to adjust or I'm just going to get steamrolled. Is that fair to say too, that life's just kind of presented some things and brought some things into your life personally where it's just hey, I've got to change, I've got to adjust, I got to get out of that comfort zone of holding on to maybe that perfectionism?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And I found too, the white knuckling grip of control never worked.
Right.
It actually made life harder.
Miserable for me personally. Yep.
And so when I actually embraced failure, when I actually embraced my husband Chris, and learning from him, this was a new way for me to actually have a lens on that was so much softer and sweeter and compassionate.
Absolutely.
And I was so mean and critical in my 20s on myself, to be honest.
Yep, cool. Now I can relate, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I know there's a lot of people out there that, again, kind of maybe coming from the same mold of us, because I'm the oldest between myself and my brother. There's just a lot of similarities in sports and athletics, and just having that driven, disciplined personality. We can take it overboard, and I know a lot of people will be able to relate to you and myself in that struggle with perfectionism. So, all right, so is there one favorite quote or mantra, or maybe a couple? I know before we hit record you said there's a lot of them for you, but maybe is there just one or two that you really hold on to day to day, Jacki, in your life?
Yeah. Well, I really love, if you want a specific quote, I have to look it up, but it's the Howard Thurman quote.
Okay, cool.
And it talks about, don't go out and do something in the world because someone else said to. Go out and do what makes you come alive.
There we go.
And so that's really what I've been listening for, is what makes me come alive, and even allowing it to be different year over year.
Right.
So that's super cool. The other one I love from Paulo Coelho is, when you choose something, the universe will conspire to help you to get it. Even if it doesn't happen right away.
Right.
The Alchemist is one of my favorite books, with quotes on quotes on quotes about being open. And then if you were to ask me what's a mantra I've tried on, I have an index card on my mirror that says, what am I open to receiving today? And this actually is where I loosen the grip, and I open my eyes and look around. Instead of my to-do list and other people in my email guiding my day, I can see there are things to receive as well as give.
Awesome. So last question for the warm-up, and then we're going to just kind of keep the free-flowing, free spirit going here. Favorite or most listened to podcast? And just before you answer that, you have your own podcast. You're a co-host of the Rock Your Bliss podcast. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So outside of your own podcast, is there a favorite or most listened to, or kind of a go-to podcast that you gain a lot of value from and really enjoy and appreciate?
Yeah, I always love the TED Talk podcast. Always. When I'm in the car, that's a go-to. And I also love stories. Like, I loved the Serial podcast. That was fun to have something from start to finish.
Yeah.
But I would say that the TED Talk podcast is great. What other ones do I listen to? I mean, that's honestly my favorite that I listen to the most.
Okay, very good. All right, Jacki, so I just want to transition into a little bit of your backstory, your background. If you don't mind sharing with myself and the listeners kind of like where you grew up, and just a quick little snapshot of like your childhood. You mentioned previously sports, so kind of like what sports you were involved with, and then just kind of transition maybe into high school and then post-high school, if you don't mind sharing that.
Yeah. So I grew up in Houston, Texas, born and raised. My family is from Indiana, so I have Midwest values, but we grew up in Texas. They moved there before I was born. And I would say, I was thinking back about this today. I lived in a little blue house in this sweet neighborhood, and we used to have block parties, and we knew our neighbors. It felt very 50s-esque, if you will. We'd walk across the street. I babysat the neighbors down the road. My friends lived with a trampoline 3 blocks away, and I'd ride my bicycle. Mm-hmm. Very much a sweet, sweet neighborhood and a sweet, sweet life. My mother is a teacher. She was a teacher at my school from, when you started to 8th grade. She's a PE teacher.
That's what I am.
Cool. Oh, perfect.
Good deal.
I have a lot of them in my circle. And my dad actually owned an ice cream shop when I was growing up. So we had health and ice cream. It was perfect.
That's a great combination.
I know. It was awesome. And it was really cool to see my mom innovate as a PE teacher at a school, and to see my dad innovate as a leader and a manager of an ice cream store. So I definitely have that entrepreneurial blood running through my veins. And I did start in dance. My mom owns a dance company, so I danced and ballet, jazz, tumbling, all the things, which was so fun. I think it really plays into the performer in me. And then around like 4th and 5th grade, I started to play softball. I tried soccer 1 year, and then I was out of soccer. And then I played volleyball in my middle school grades, and then into high school I played volleyball, softball, and basketball. So I kind of liked all of them.
Yeah.
And high school was interesting. I was telling my best friend the other day, I showed up for my first day of high school with ringworm on my face. That's right. you all heard that right. I'd been playing in Indiana with a batch of kittens, and so I had a huge circle on my face, and I was like, wow, no way, universe, no way,
That's
God,
funny.
am I showing up with a worm on my face as a freshman in high school? So I think I started out, pretty intense.
Right, yeah.
And I did a lot of advanced courses, and I definitely balanced school and sports, and then I studied late at night. So I definitely packed my life in high school. And then I went to college, and oh man, that freedom really rocked me. Holy hell.
Did you party hard? Or?
Yes, I went to Indiana University. We were like one of the party schools on the rankings, whatever. And I really, I think that's what college is for. Parents listening will be like, ugh. But I went there and I explored so many different avenues of living. I skipped classes my freshman year, and I bought cherry Smirnoff vodka, which my stomach hurts saying that.
Yeah.
But I had like empty bottles as decorations. I feel sick saying it still. Okay. And I went the opposite of perfectionism. And I remember getting an email that they were going to take away. I had a financial scholarship because I'd done so well in high school.
Right.
They'd given me some money, and they were like, hey, we're going to put your academic scholarship on probation if you don't get your life together. And so I kept getting knocks like that through college. That was really nice. And I did. I got my life together, changed my major, things like that. But college was interesting. College, I was a chameleon. Every year I had a different personality. Every year I had a different friend group. And it was an interesting learning time of trying on different personalities. I also had a job to support me through school. So like being integral to my work. I was a waitress.
Yeah.
And slanging pancakes in the morning, but staying out till 2 a.m. at night, if not later.
Right.
So really learning and unlearning and failing at balance. But I loved school. I loved college. If I were to go back in my 30s, I would probably love it even more because I love to learn. And then I graduated and I moved, packed up my suite. What I had a Jetta, and I drove straight to LA.
Sweet.
And I started working in the Hollywood industry. And I was in, an agency, and then I worked in PR.
Okay.
And oh man,
Your degree, so was your degree in like
communications?
Marketing?
Yeah,
Okay,
communications and gender
cool.
studies was my double major.
Okay.
And I thought I'd use it advertising at Nike or something.
Okay, yeah.
But I started in LA and I started in Hollywood. I was like, oh cool, maybe I'll do this. And then I was like, hell no. And then I moved to PR, and that was an even bigger hell no. I was so lost. Oh man, I was lost. So I signed up to run a marathon, 26.2 miles. Cardi crazy. This will be nice to break up the craziness.
Right.
And it did. I started training every Saturday morning in Santa Monica, California, right by the ocean. I met one of my close friends, Christina, there, and we started training together. And it was so cool because there were so many times I had to say no to an old version of myself.
Right.
And say yes to a new version of myself that was getting healthy, choosing to run instead of go out. And all my friends were like, what are you doing? That's weird. And it was weird, especially in that industry where networking and going out is what you do. And it was cool. After I ran that marathon, I came home and I was like, wow, new life. I quit my PR job and I went and worked at Lululemon.
Sweet.
I started on the ground level. I remember my parents being like, what are you doing? You left a salary and benefits. And I was like, you'll see. And ironically, my parents will probably listen to this. They're both probably decked in Lululemon right now. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. I met my mentor there within weeks of being at the store. And then I moved through the store into a headquarters role. So I worked on their brand team. So instead of Nike, it was Lululemon. It all works out.
Yeah.
Just not on my timeline, of course.
Yeah.
And so I worked at Lululemon, and then after about 6.5 years at the company, I left and started my own companies. Rock Your Bliss. It's a yoga-inspired coaching company with Mary Beth LaRue, and then I have my own consulting and coaching business that I've called Goals on the Rocks because I coach goals in the Rocky Mountains.
So just to take a step back, was there any time frame, in college or post-college or anything kind of in that time frame, early, mid, late 20s, was there like an obstacle or something that you really had to kind of mentally overcome to kind of get to that next hurdle of life or move into that next season of life?
How many do you want?
just whatever kind of the biggest one, the one that was just like you had to figure this out, or you had to overcome this,
yeah.
and you know whatever it is, if it's body image, anxiety, or something else, I don't know, but whatever it is for you, just so like the listeners can be like, hey, I've gone through that, or
yeah.
you know, I can kind of relate. You know what I mean?
In my PR job, oh man, I remember everything. I was laying in my bed. I had this weird orange comforter with flowers on it and a turquoise dresser. Very neon life I live. Mm-hmm. And I had to go to work on like a Wednesday. Quentin, I couldn't get out of bed. I was so unhappy at my job that I couldn't get out of bed. And I was like, well, this isn't right. Mm-hmm. And I know in my life I've lived, like, I love to get out of bed. I love to go do things. I hate being bored. Right. Mm-hmm. And when I couldn't get out of bed, I didn't want to get dressed. I didn't want to shower, all the things. I was like, this is it. This is it. Your body is literally telling you don't want to go do what you signed up to do. Mm-hmm. And so at that moment, I'd actually applied at Lululemon, and they hadn't been writing me back. It took forever. And I couldn't be jobless. I had a way more expensive rent than I needed to be paying anyways. Right. And yet, I rolled in that date at work, and I set a date to put in my 2 weeks, whether I'd heard from Lululemon or not. And I've actually had that happen numerous times where your body literally says, make a decision. Mm-hmm. This is no longer working. And so that, I think, was the start around 24 or 25 where I started to listen to my body. I'd turned it off for a long time. Yeah. And I turned that switch back on.
So I can relate with that, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. But I think a lot of people... They never get in tune with themselves. So I wanna because I know a lot of, from just kind of doing some research and studying kind of like what your jam is, you know, again, going back to like the core values and just kind of living that best version of yourself, right?
Right.
So I see a lot of people that are the hamster in the wheel. They're moving in life, but they're not going anywhere. I see a lot of people that are the dog chasing the tail. They're trying to catch their tail, which is never going to happen. They're moving, but they're not going anywhere. You see the people that, you know, they clock in, they do whatever they got to do, they clock out, they go home, crack open the beer, watch some TV, fall asleep, and then it's the same thing over and over again. So for me personally, I try to run as far away from that life as possible. I don't want that life. I've never wanted that life. So for you, Jacki, like, what is the importance of, again, kind of going back to knowing your why, having those core values, and just understanding like there's more to life than where I'm at today, and kind of having that understanding of like who I am, why I'm here on this earth, and what this whole thing is all about. Does that all kind of make sense? Because I know I kind of said a lot of things there, but...
Oh, yeah, I see it too, and I've been there. I've been in that
circle. And so have I, in a certain sense. But a lot of people, they're not in touch with their inner self. They don't know why. Yeah. So if you don't mind, just kind of run with that and share what your heart and your passion is in regards to helping others find their why and what life is all about for them.
Yeah, so... In regards to goal coaching and really listening to people in this space, a lot of people will reach out to me when they feel stuck, or on the flip side, when they're ready to launch something that scares them. Either or, right? Stuck in like something they know they want to leave, or ready at the brink to launch something that's big that asks them to be the next version of themselves.
Right.
And when I work with people, I'm listening for what they care for. There's a great TED Talk by Simon Sinek called How Great Leaders Inspire Action. It's all about knowing your why. And when we know our why, we commit to it again and again and again. And we can see what aligns to it and what doesn't. And so when you know what matters to you, your values, that's where you start to consciously calendar them. Are you going outside? One of mine's nature. Mm-hmm. Have I made eye contact with my daughters? Family. And this is where I start to create my days that fill me up. Versus waiting for someone at work, or that 80s song, I believe, everybody's working for the weekend. Mm-hmm. I don't want to work for the weekend. Right. I want to live a life I love every day. And Absolutely. That disrupted a status quo is living. It disrupts the status quo that the U.S. has created. Work hours, live this way, and then you'll retire, and then you can be happy. I was like, nope, I don't buy it. Mm-hmm. And so when I connect with people, I'm listening to their vision, and then I speak to them as if they're already that person.
Right.
And so that is such a cool place for people to be seen. When they're being seen at work or at home in a certain label, that's what they know. But when we work together and they're like, this is what I want, I'm like, cool, I'm going to talk to that person. Mm-hmm. It allows them connected to their why, grounded in their values, clear on their vision to step into what they actually want.
Right.
And start to perhaps get really uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And so I would say that place isn't always easy. It takes effort.
Absolutely.
But that's why coaching is so important, because it creates accountability. It creates a cheerleader. It creates someone that believes in you and someone with an unbiased opinion.
So if somebody has no clue what their why is and what their life is all about or supposed to be all about, what's one or two actionable steps? Like right now, when they get done listening to this, they can say, hey, you know what? I'm going to start doing 1, 2 that Jacki said to kind of move in that direction of getting out of that comfort zone and finding out why and what and who and when and all of that.
Okay. We're 3 months into 2019. I don't know when this will go live, but go ahead and make a list 1 through 20. And list the things you can celebrate so far, 1 through 20. This year, January to March, what have you gotten up to? I know you have something to celebrate. And I know you're going to get to 11 and put your pen down and be like, that's it. There's more. Keep going. You don't have to look for these huge philosophical things. They can be, I went for my first run after having a baby. They can be, I lifted that weight I wanted to. They can be, I started eating lunch. That's one of mine. And so 20 things, list them. Now, the second thing to do would be ask yourself, what are the 5 most important things to me? Like, what do I value? Friendship, freedom, financial prosperity, fun. Look at all those F's I just rolled out. And allow yourself to see, like, what's important to me? That simple question, 5 things. And then I want you to put those lists next to each other. And I want you to start to draw lines or right next to it. When did friendship come up? When did fun come up? When did entrepreneurship come up? And start to see how you're living. And even if they're glimmers, this is your why. The things you're most thankful for and the things that you value most. And then that's when you start to look at, like, oh, these are some of my core values. These are things I'm choosing to celebrate versus, oh, I'll celebrate later when I'll be happy when syndrome.
Right.
And so I love doing that exercise to remember, oh, I've done some fun things. Perhaps I forgot. Especially after by Friday after a long week. Or, wow, this is what's important to me. And I have been living them. I just didn't realize it. And of course, then you get to ask yourself questions. How do I do that more? Do I need a job change that supports this more? And being able to then lead your life from that clear, stable space. I love having like numbers listed on a page to give me ideas of how I want to be living.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. All right, Jacki. So I want to touch on the importance, and in the introduction reading, that was something that you wrote in regards to your husband. So, and that was a very open, transparent post on Instagram. I just want you to share a little bit more, if you don't mind, the importance of family to you personally. Specifically, if you don't mind, starting with your husband, and obviously we got a little bit of a snippet of that with that introduction reading, but just what does your husband mean to you, and just having that intimate relationship with somebody and how that's kind of transformed and changed you. And then also, if you don't mind, just touching on the importance and value in your life of being a mama, as you say it.
So remember that crazy time in college I told you about? Mm-hmm. Great. So I walked into a floor that was all boys, and I turned right, and that was Chris's dorm. Okay. Chris was one of the first boys I met in college. We were both 18. And, oh man, I came in literally probably Miley Cyrus style, like a wrecking ball. Like a wrecking ball. It was loud. And Chris is more quiet and reserved and, oh my God, so dry. And, oh, I just loved him. I had such a crush. But it was just a crush. It would have never worked in college. So we became friends in college. We did not date. And then later we stayed in touch. I mean, here's the weirdest things. These are like, universal like glimmers we talked about. When Facebook was launched, we were juniors in college, and Chris and I decided to be married on Facebook as a joke. Mm-hmm. And then I got a boyfriend, so we had to get divorced. But So we did that. And then we dreamed when we left school. He was working in Chicago, I was working in LA, and I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll move to Chicago. Maybe we can be roommates. He started looking up apartments. We were just visioning for fun. I still have those Google chats.
Right.
And so glimmers, not dating. And so then years later, I did want to move to Chicago, and Chris came to see me when I was visiting different job areas and looking where I wanted to live, and there were sparks there, and I got so nervous, and I also don't think I was ready, and so sparks flew, and we connected, but I also went back to LA, and I freaked out, stopped answering his calls, and was like, I'm not ready. I need to date more people. I need to date myself, all these things. Right. So it took me a year, and I was at a karaoke bar, and this guy walked in with a Chicago accent, and I texted Chris, and I was like, I need to see you. Can you book a flight? And he did. And he's like, I got on that plane and was like, what was I thinking? I'm like, I'm so glad you did, because when he landed, I ran up to him, and I just embraced him, and we went out for hamburgers and wine. We were running a 10K the next morning. And we were walking home, and I fell down. Yeah, I totally tripped. And Chris put his hand out to pick me up, and I just blurted out, I love you. What? I mean, wine helps, but I just blurted out, I love you. And he didn't say it back, of course, right away, because it was like, what is going on? But I did. And he said it later, and of course, we continued to fall in love with each other. We started dating, and I asked him to be my boyfriend on my birthday, all these things. And I moved to Chicago actually pretty quickly after, with a job promotion, but also to be with Chris. And there was a moment, this is the biggest moment, when I talked about choosing to learn from Chris. We were at dinner with friends, and my friend Eric was talking, and I started to blurt something out to relate to him. And Chris put his hand on my arm. He said, hey, Jackie, it's not your time to talk. Eric's still talking. And I hated it. And loved it. Yeah. I don't think I'd ever had someone really call me out in such a beautiful, compassionate way that not only respected others but taught me something. And he said, it's time to listen. And I said, okay. And I asked him about it later, and he's like, you're kind of an interrupter. And I was. I was in prove-it mode still. I wanted to be seen and heard and make sure I belonged and relate to people. And there was something about being with Chris that allowed me to soften that prove-it mode and be really loved and held in a way I'd never been before, because he wasn't trying to change me. And he loved me for me in all of my positivity and crazy, but also in the hard times and my darkness and my insecurities. And so I got listen tattooed on my wrist. I should add to Chris, but I got listen as a reminder to listen. And slow down and be quiet. And this has become very much my Chris tattoo. I vowed to listen to him in our wedding vows. And so we're very different. I'm very loud, and he's very reserved. He's actually so funny. He becomes the funnier one, which I kind of get jealous of. Because my funny is more cheesy 80s song, and his is more dry, political, witty. And where did that come from? And so my relationship with Chris, where so many times in my 20s I was like, I need to date myself, I realized in choosing a partner that loves me fully, I learned more than I would ever learn alone by choosing to trust that he has something important to say and listening to it. Cool. And so, very in love with him still, and we're on the same team as, parents and life partners.
So, what was the main? Obviously, I don't care what anybody says, but obviously there's got to be initially some sort of physical attraction. For most people, there's got to be some sort of physical attraction in the beginning. But what was past that? What caught your attention about Chris? Do you think initially in the beginning that you just really liked about him or appreciated about him?
His honesty.
Honesty?
Straight honesty, no bullshit. It's very rare these days, including myself. I've continued to learn to be honest because he's my example. How cool.
Awesome. So then branching off from that, you and Chris are a team, and you guys have two children now, correct?
Yeah, two daughters, Evergreen and Nora.
Beautiful. So if you don't mind, what is motherhood done for you, and what does that mean to you right now, just being a mom and having that responsibility of two small human beings kind of in your arms. Like you've got to take care of them. Like they're yours. Like they're from you and Chris. And what does that mean to you?
You know, motherhood has been quite a cool journey. I've had, 2 children in the span of like 3.5 years, and it's pretty close together, so it's also crazy. And it's interesting sitting here with you. I was up at 3 a.m. with my youngest reading a book, and of course I wanted to be asleep.
Right.
And yet the book is what made her happy, calmed her down, allowed her to stop crying, and I give up sleep for that child. And there's a lot I give up for these children because they're actually creating a new space in my heart, in my mind, and really actually evolving me into a softer, more patient human being. And even recognizing when they're learning to walk, when Evie's learning how to, listen to her emotions and speak them out loud, how to, like I've been talking about, listen to them and allow myself to learn from them, not be like leading all the time, but it be a beautiful balance of learning and leading, as you said, their caretaker, but also them entering onto our team and us being in this life together. So motherhood has taught me about listening and patience. Oh man, I always wanted to be patient, and motherhood has forced me to be patient. Right. It has also taught me that my heart's bigger than I knew. How nice to feel like the Grinch when your heart like bursts out of a square you thought it was in.
Right.
My heart's expanded, and also to really be in a place to evaluate how you're living. My second child has forced me and Chris to make some big decisions about who we want to be as parents, how we want to interact with one another communication-wise, how Chris and I take time for ourselves so we can show up for our children. With our first child, I feel like we could pass back and forth and make it work. With our second child, it's like, whoa,
right.
We need to recalibrate. And how cool that your children become the check-in and really allow you space to say, I have a place here too. What are we doing together? And what are we doing as individuals? And respecting both spaces together and individual. So motherhood is I'm still fairly new. I like to give myself that beginner badge. I'm only 3 years in, so I've got a lot to learn, but I've learned so much already. I'm so scared for what else is coming.
Right. But also though, because of who you are and what you value in life, there's that scariness. But I think also probably you could agree that there's some excitement. Because you're just going to continue to learn more, right?
I think if you're not scared, you're not living.
Right. But but in that fear and all of that, but there's also that excitement and that just kind of anticipation, like, man, what's tomorrow going to bring? What are my kids? What are Chris? What are the amazing people that I'm surrounding myself with? What are they going to teach me so I can learn more and grow more, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. All right, so we've been going for 43 minutes, so we're going to just kind of try to wrap things up here. Jacki, I just want to touch on the importance for you because you have a lot going on. You're a very powerful woman. You're an entrepreneur and all these different things, mom, wife, and friend, all this type of stuff. What is the importance for you personally in first of all taking care of yourself, like your mind, your body, and your spirit, so that you can give to not only your family but your friends and the people that you're coaching and training and things of that nature? Because I know it's really easy for us to dive into something or to dive into a lot of things and then neglect ourselves. And I know when I've done that, trying to burn the candle at both ends, it ends up not very good. So how do you take care of yourself personally, mentally, physically, and spiritually, and what value do you have on that in your own personal life?
So I used to think self-care was a luxury. I thought it was like an add-on, or I thought it was something that you did later. And what I've learned is self-care is a necessity. It's a necessity to showing up as your best self. And what I've also learned is self-care looks different to different people. So my self-care ways might be fast and loud and might have other people involved, where some people's self-care are solo and bathtub. Mine, it might be a hike with 30 women. And having the permission to do self-care my way, and also calendaring it so that I do take care of myself so that I can take care of others. I fill my cup so you can fill others' cup.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, how does, because, you know, this is a fitness podcast, and you mentioned the marathon and running and outdoors at a couple different times during the interview and conversation. What is the importance for you, Jacki, of that physical movement, that physical fitness, eating the right way? How does that tie in and play into your self-care and kind of part of your core values?
Again, necessity.
Necessity.
I will say I'll never run a full marathon again.
Yeah.
I have no desire to do that. But I did put a half sign in front of marathon, and I love a half marathon.
Cool.
I do those quite often. I hike all the time. I love yoga. I love yin yoga, like that really quiet, slow yoga. And movement for me is a place to connect in, like we talked about, bringing the body into the conversation. When I'm moving my body, when I can't have a screen in front of me, there's something really intuitive that I love to be reminded of, that's not on a computer, that doesn't happen via email. And so hiking in nature and feeling part of nature, yoga movement where I can finally quiet my mind, running where I can hear my heart beating. These are things that create self-care for me and remind me that I'm human, that I'm alive, and actually that movement is necessary to sometimes shed things I've been holding.
Right.
And so that would be why it's so important, because I get, lint, energetic lint from the world stuck on my cute sweaters, and I gotta lint roll them off with some movement.
That's funny. So is there like an intentional movement practice that you have each day, or if not each day, like, a given set amount of days throughout the week, or is it again just kind of like when you can get it in, you get it in?
Yeah, that would be what I'm exploring as a mother of two right now. I don't have a set practice. I do have a goal to get outside every day. Yesterday I swung in a hammock. Cool. That was movement for me. Oh God, it felt so good. I mean, I went for a walk around the neighborhood, which was nice as well, but the hammock was the connection for me. I do love to hike at least once a weekend. I live in the mountains on purpose. So hiking and hammock swinging, and even if I'm in between client calls, going outside for 2 minutes for a breath, even if it's freezing. Those are ways that I make movement, literally moving out of my chair from my screen and outside, part of my day. So that's where nature and connection come into play, because it's moving into my body, connecting my body with earth. Really allowing those values to play into how I'm creating a structure that I feel most alive in.
Cool. Now, you mentioned earlier in our conversation something about starting to eat lunch. What is kind of the food thing look like for you, and is there kind of a specific way that you like to eat, or is it again just kind of just free and you just eat what you got to eat when you got to eat it? How does that look for you?
Well, I started working with an intuitive eating coach, actually. Okay. Her name's Soshi, and she's lovely. And when we were working together, I noticed that I don't eat lunch. I eat emails for lunch. I'll just work. I'm so passionate about what I'm doing, and I love it, and I'm in that drive mode. I'm in the zone. And she said, Jacki, you have to be nourishing your body to do the work you do. And I'm also breastfeeding, so I need to feed my child and eat food. And I was talking with my husband about this. If you're listening, this might be the first and most important thing to listen to. Marry someone that cooks for you.
There you go.
I'm
hoping to do that.
I mean, my husband is a chef in the kitchen.
That's
and
great.
He loves meal prep. He's a nutrition coach, so he's got the knowledge. Sweet. And I'm so grateful, and I give myself a pat on the shoulder that I married someone who wants to take care of me that way. I do cook sometimes. Chris is laughing right now listening to this, but he is the main provider, and he really does such a beautiful job of teaching me, like, put color on the plate. So that's been really cool to explore color, red and yellow, roasted red peppers, and then a salad, and then chicken, like having color on the plate, and fruit at night. I have a chocolate craving, but now I've been doing like oranges and strawberries. How nice. And so health has always, as you know, I grew up with a PE teacher of a mother. Yeah. Chris actually was a PE teacher before he became a nutrition coach. And I have that health guidance in my realm. It's ingrained in my body. So what we've been doing is really figuring out, now that we have 2 children too, like, what's this look like for us? Chris has made all the children's food. That's been awesome to see. And how we want to be eating, how we want to be talking about food, how I want to have a relationship with food, and as an example to my daughters.
Right.
And so it's very, very important in our house.
Excellent. So last question, what sets your soul on fire?
Oh, I know the answer. People living their goals, even when it scares them. I love being around books because all those books was someone's goal.
Right.
I love going to a flea market with vendors who have their goods that they created by hand. Those are their goals alive. So when I'm talking with someone and they're about to press the launch button, when I'm speaking with someone visioning who they want to be in 10, 15 years, just being privy to be the one listening, my heart's on fire.
Awesome. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, Jacki, or find more out about kind of like what you do, what you're all about, what you offer in regards to coaching and everything else you have going on, where can people find you or find out more about you?
Yeah, my website's JackiCarr.com, JackiCarr.com. And then also my Rock Your Bliss site is RockYourBlissMovement.com. It's a movement. And then from there, at Jacki Carr and at Rock Your Bliss on Instagram are the quickest, fastest ways.
Perfect. And I just want to thank you very much, Jacki, for your time again and for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to meet with me here in Denver, which is not where you live and not where I live, but you made it happen. We made it happen. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Cool. Awesome. So listeners, thank you so much once again for tuning into the 127 Fit podcast. If you guys want to reach out to me, Instagram is at 127 Fitness, Facebook at Quentin Vars, website, which is just my blog site, some writings, is 127fitness.com. And if you guys could please like, subscribe, share, and most importantly, leave a review, especially within the iTunes app, that would be great. If you think you would be a great guest or somebody else that you know, or if you have a friend or two that you think would be a great guest for the podcast, please email me, and that email is 127fit@gmail.com. And per usual, I will leave you guys with Proverbs 24:10, which states, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. This time until next time, I will catch you guys later.